Hey friends, what up? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Ayin Daled, Daf 74 of Masechta Ksubis. Friends, at the beginning of the Daf, we continue with our discussion from yesterday about the fellow makes a t'nai and then gets married. Okay. We're going to start in Daf Ayin Gimel Beis, about 5-6 lines from the bottom. Eisvei Bodem Chacham der Beliezer B'Ktana Shesia V'Yev Niskarsha Oy Vavoy V'Yisom B'Chaya Of Oy Vavoy. Friends, do you remember this from Masechta Yevamis? Yisom B'Chaya Of. Who can tell me how you have a situation of Yisom B'Chaya Of? Well, if you have a Ketana who gets married and then gets divorced, right? So her father marries her off, so she's married Midoraisa, and then she gets divorced. That's a divorce midoraisa. Now, once she gets divorced, her father can no longer marry her off midoraisa. If she gets married at this point, it will only be midorabanan, and she can just leave with meyun. So that's what we're talking about now. So he's saying that modem chacham that the chacham admit to Rabbi Eliezer. We'll see exactly what this machlokas is in a little bit. B'ktana shesiya avia, that if you have a ketana and her father marries her off, finis garsha, but then she gets divorced as a ketana, v'yisom b'chaya of, and now she's considered a orphan, even though her father is still alive. Ve'chzira, and then if she gets remarried, so it's midarabanan, because the father, she's considered, just like if her father was dead, so if her mother or brother married her off, it would be midarabanan. So also she's considered yosoma b'chaya av, even though her father's alive, still, if she gets remarried, it's only going to be midarabanan. Shecholetzes v'lo misyabemes. If her husband then dies, so then you'd have to do chalitza, you don't do yibum, because the marriage is only midarabanan at this point, right? Because meaning, midoraisa, she was divorced. Midoraisa, she was divorced from her husband, right? She was married midoraisa because her father married her off. Then she got divorced midoraisa, which means that she can't marry any of the brothers. That's also because of grushas ochiv. So she can't marry any of the brothers. Now she gets married, remarried to the guy midarabanan. She gets remarried to the original guy midarabanan. So then she can't do yibum. She has to do chalitza. Right? So shecholetzes v'lo misyabemes mipnei shegerusha gerushin k'morim, because when she got divorced as a ketana, she's divorced midaraisa, and therefore she's also to the brothers because of Eisha's grushas ochiv. And when she remarried the guy, it's only midarabanan at this point. When do we say that she does chalitza? When they got divorced when she was still a ketana, and then she got remarried when she was a ketana. But if they got divorced when she was a ketana, but when they got remarried, she was already a gedola. So then the remarriage is midoraisa. This is the important part. Or that they got remarried as a ketana, but then she became a gedola while they were still together. Vames, and then he dies. Then she can do chalitza or yibum. So when she was a ketana, she got remarried as a ketana, which is midarabanan. But then she became an adult while they were still married, and they had bia together. So we're saying at that point, we can assume that they are married, that they had bia l'shem kiddushin, and they are married, and therefore she would do yibum. She could do yibum. But they say, Rabbi Eliezer's opinion is that no, even in that case, that she got remarried when she was a gedola, or she got remarried as a ketana but was still with him when she became a gedola, even so, she would do chalitza and not yibum. Now over here, it's considered taos isha achas, right? It's one woman. Ufligi hasam ufligi, and they argue, right? So we see that even though it's this ketana, they're still arguing about when she got married when she was a ketana and then became a gedola. So they're arguing about whether she would be considered married or not. So asamnami behaka miflagi. No, this is the machlokas. Ma'asavra adam yudei shen kiddushin ketana klum. That according to the Tanakama, the husband would know that the kiddushin when she was a ketana are invalid, don't count for anything. And therefore, when she became an adult, he knew that now he was going to have bia l'shem kiddushin, and he did. And therefore, they're considered married, and she could do yibum. A fellow doesn't know that the Kedushin of the Ketana would be nothing. And therefore, when they have Bia, it's with the intention of the initial Kedushin. And the initial Kedushin, she was a Ketana, which is Midabanan, and therefore they're not considered actually married, and therefore she would be unable to do Yibum. Babylon. Yisrael. Itmanami. Where else was that? Where did we have something that was like always mention like somebody's name? We would like mention something and then mention somebody's name. We'd be like da 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 da. Who was that? I can't remember. Who was it? Was it Hillel Lester? I feel like maybe Hillel Lester. We had some. Yeah, I feel like it was something. There was something where like I would mention it in it, and then it would be like Hillel Lester would come after that. I can't remember. I think maybe Hillel Lester once pointed out something. Like, Hillel Lester. Maybe it was like something to do with like Reuven and Shimon and Sarah and Rivka or something like that. Hillel Lester. Alright. Can't remember what it was. You guys remember what it was? Hillel, do you remember what it was? Idmar Nami, Amr Rav Acha bar Yaakov, Amr Rav Yochanan. It was also stated as Rav Acha bar Yaakov in the name of Yochanan, Makadesh al Tanai, Uval, that if a fellow is Makadesh, a woman with a stipulation, with a Tanai, Uval, but then they have Bia, without any stipulation, they call Eina Tzricha Menu Get. Everyone agrees that no get necessary because the Kiddushin was with a stipulation that was not met, and therefore they are not considered married. So that is like Rabbah, who says that everybody agrees that when it's one person, so it would be it would not be considered marriage. It would have to be as though it was two people. Eisvei, we have a kasha. Rav Acha bre Dervika bar Achte. So Rav Acha bre Dervika, his nephew, right? Rav Acha bar Yaakov's nephew was Rav Acha bre Dervika. Very interesting. Chalitza mutes. When it comes to also we're back in Yevamis. Chalitza mutes, a mistaken chalitza ksher is okay. Ezu chalitza mutes, what's considered a mistaken chalitza? Amr Shlakish. Says Rish Lakish, well, if you tell the fellow, right, so you have, are we doing this again? Reuven's married to Sarah. Reuven dies. Now there's Shimon. Seriously? Hillel Lester. So now, if we want Shimon to do chalitza, so if we say to Shimon, chalotzla v'chachata konsa, do chalitza, and by doing chalitza you'll now be married to her. That would be considered a mistake, and it would be a chalitza mutes, and it would be kosher. Amalei Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Yochanan says to Rish Lakish, I don't understand. Ani shone ben sheniskavenu v'lo niskavni. Whether he has kavana and she doesn't for chalitza. Ben sheniskavni v'lo niskavnu, or whether she was having kavana for the chalitza but he wasn't. Chalitza also psula. The chalitza is possible. Achiskavnu shneim, they both have to have kavana. Chalitza also ksheira, and you say that such a chalitza where they say do chalitza and by doing so you'll be married to her, and he has no clue what he's getting himself into when he does it. You're saying that it's ksheira. So Elam Rabbi Yochanan rather suggests Rabbi Yochanan kol she'omer chalutzla amana shetitin l'chol masayim zuz. So rather chalitza mutes is that they say to him do chalitza, and then if you do chalitza she'll give you 200 zuz. So he makes a stipulation. So there's the condition. And then he goes ahead and does the chalitza. Well, since he did a maise, since he did the chalitza, so that undoes the condition, the initial condition. It undoes the initial condition. So let's say over here as well, that if he's mekadesher with conditions, but then he has bia without condition, given the ball, that once he has bia, so it undoes the initial condition. So Rav Acha bar Yaakov, why are you saying that everyone agrees that if he was Mekadesh al Tanai and then had Bia, Stam, it would not be a good Kiddushin because of the Tanai, but we seem to be saying over here from the Chalitza example that once you take action, it undoes the original Tanai. So I would say that once they have Bia, it undoes the initial conditions. So Amalei, Bar Rav Shapir Ka'amait, so Rav Acha bar Yaakov says to his nephew, Rav Acha bar Dervika, young Torah scholar, Torah student, you're saying good, but say better. Where do we learn out stipulations from? From the conditions of the sons of God and the sons of Reuven when they asked to stay on the Eivra Anoar. So any condition that would be able to be executed by way of a messenger, of a proxy, such as to fight in a war, so that would be considered a proper stipulation, a stipulation that can be fulfilled through a messenger, through a proxy. But if it would be unable to be fulfilled by way of a proxy, well, kiyasam, right, meaning if it would be unable to be fulfilled by way of a proxy as was able to be done by the fighting, it wouldn't be considered a tanai. And therefore, what are we even talking about? I don't even know what we're talking about. Okay, and therefore by chalitza, since chalitza cannot be done by a proxy, so therefore the tanai, right, that on the condition that she'll give you 200 zuz was never a really valid tanai anyways. But what about bia, right? We gave an example at the end of the daf yesterday, that I'll be with you under the condition that that your father is okay with it. And yet we're saying that it's a proper tanai. But bia you can't do by way of a proxy. Well, that's just because kiddushay bia are compared to kiddushay kesef and kiddushay shtar, and by those you can have a proxy. So therefore, and because we compare all of the different types of kiddushins to each other, so that is why the stipulation works. But in general, a stipulation would need to be one that can be accomplished by way of a proxy. Very interesting stuff. If a fellow betroths a woman with a loan, right? She owes him money, and he says, you know what, keep the money, and that'll be your kesef kiddushin. That doesn't work. He has to give it to her. But then they have bia. Al tanai, if he makes a stipulation and that wasn't met, uval, and then has bia. Or if he's mekadesh with less than a shaveh pruta, and then they have bia. Everyone agrees that they're married and she would need a get. Amr Rav Yosef bar Abba, Amr Rav Menachem, Amr Rav Ami, HaMekadesh b'Pachis, Mishvei Prute, Uval. Look, in the case of when he's Mekadesh with less than a Shvei Prute and then he has bia, so then Tzrichei Menu get. Yeah, so then they would be considered married and she would need a get. But by the other ones, right, Bahahu Delotai, Davke, when it comes to less than a shaveh pruta, so he knows that less than a shaveh pruta won't work, and therefore when he has bia, it's going to be the shem kiddushin, and therefore they would need a get. But by the other ones, by the condition, by if it's less than or if it was by a loan, so then it would not. He wouldn't know that it's ineffective, and therefore he wouldn't be having bia l'shem kiddushin because he would think that the milva worked, or that the loan worked, or that the condition was still acceptable kiddushin. So therefore they're not actually married because the bia wasn't l'shem kiddushin. That if a fellow is mekadesh a woman by a stipulation that was not met, uval, and then he has bia, they're considered married and she would need a divorce document. This was an actual incident, and the rabbis were unable to release this woman without a get. To the exclusion from this Tana, the Amr Rav Yudah Amr Shmuel Mishum Bishmuel Vilonis Paso Asura, that when it says by a sota that if it was consensual, right? If it wasn't against her will, so then she's a surah on a spasa. But if it was against her will, muteris, then she's permitted to her husband. But there's another woman that even though it was consensual, muteris, she's still permitted. Ve'ezo, who is this? Ve'ezo zo, shekidusheh kiddushay tos. It's referring to a woman whose kiddushin was accidental. That that there was a stipulation that was not met. Shafilu ben amurkav akseifa, that even if they had a baby, she would be able to go back to her husband, right? Meaning, if they got married by way of a stipulation, so then it wouldn't be considered kiddushin, and therefore she would, right? Even if she had, right? So therefore they're not married, and if she had a relationship with somebody else, she would still be able to go back to her original husband because they were not actually married. So we see, according to this opinion, if there was a tanai that was not met, and then they had bia, so they're not considered married. But we had said that if they had a tanai that was not met, and then they had bia, they would be considered married. Okay, fine. One of the rabbis taught, Halcha Eitzel Chacham v'Yitira Mikudeshes. So if she went to a Chacham, right? So she had Nidarim, and then she got engaged, and she had these Nidarim, but then she went to a Chacham, and he allowed them. Mikudeshes, so b'sheder that works. Eitzel Rofe v'Ripe also ain't Mikudeshes. But if she betrothed her and she had mums, and then she got the mums fixed by a doctor, that doesn't work. Ma ben chacham l'rofe. What's the difference between permitting vows and healing wounds? Chacham okres aneder meikaro. Well, a chacham is able to permit and uproot a vow, retroactively, initially. So therefore, once the vow is uprooted, so then it's ki'ilu at the time of the betrothal, she didn't have any vows. Whereas a doctor is only healing from this point and onward. Which means at the time of the Kiddushin, she had these movements. But one second, we have a verse that says that whether we're talking about if she if she permitted the vows, or whether we're talking about healing wounds, either way, it does not work. It's not good Kiddushin. Lo kasha. Says Rav, it's no problem. Harab Meir, Harab Belazar, right? So it's a machlokus of Meir and Belazar. Harab Meir the Amar Admotza Shetisbaza Ishto Bebezdin. So when we say, right, in the first brisa, so we say that if she permits the vows, then it's okay. So that's according to a Meir who says that a fellow is cool with his wife going to Bezdin to permit the vows. Elazar, this is Rabbi Elazar the Amar who says, that he doesn't want, right? A fellow doesn't expect that his wife is going to go to Bezdin to undo a vow, and therefore he did not marry her assuming, like, get betrothed her, assuming that she was going to be going to Bezdin to undo her vows. Okay, fine. Maihi, what is this machlokes between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Elazar? It's not. We learn in the Mishnah. If a fellow divorces his wife because of a particular neder, she made a vow, and he says, you know what, I'm divorcing you. He cannot remarry her. Or if he is motzi shemra, right? He thought that he was convinced that she had a relationship with somebody else, so he divorced her. So they cannot get remarried. Two possible reasons. One is out of concern that, because if we allow him to get remarried, what might happen is that, let's just say, as a neder, and then she divorces him, and then they get divorced, and then she gets remarried to somebody else, he might then be able to say, wait, I didn't realize that I can actually permit this vow, and then he might retroactively be matir the neder, and then that means that retroactively they're still married, and she couldn't get remarried to somebody else, which is a real mess. So therefore we say, look, in these cases you can't get remarried. That's that. The other way would be to sort of so that to make sure that the Jewish women are into, what does it say? So that they shouldn't be making promises, right, vows, or having relationships with other people, because they know that if they do, they won't be able to get remarried to their husbands. Fine. Rabbi Yehuda Omer says, Rabbi Yehuda, any vow that lots of people, at least 10 people know about, so then lo yachzir, you cannot get remarried. Lo yadabu rabim, but if not a lot of people know about it, so then yachzir, they can get remarried. Rabbi Meir Omer says, Rabbi Meir, kol neder shetzarech hakiras chacham lo yachzir. Any neder that needs to go to Bezdin, so then if they get divorced, he cannot get remarried, because if so, then he might, right, again, she might get remarried to somebody else, and then he'll say, I would have expected, if I knew that you could be matir, I would have expected you to go to Bezdin. So therefore we make it clear that, look, if she marries somebody else, right, that if you get divorced, that you won't be able to get remarried. But if it doesn't require going to Bezdin, so beseder. So then, if he knows about it, he'll be annul it, and so if it doesn't, fine. So if he knows about it, it can just be annul it, and there's nothing. If he leaves it, then he leaves it. Right? I mean, he's not going to say later on, if I had known, I could annul it. So Amr Rabbi Elazar says, Rabbi Elazar lo asu tzarich elim b'nei she'eino tzarich. Says Rabbi Elazar, the only reason that they say that if you need to go to Bezdin, it is also is only because of when it doesn't need to go to Beis Din, maybe he'll make the argument later on that he didn't know that he could that he could annul it. But in terms of when the ones that do need to go to Beis Din, technically speaking, there's no concern because he wouldn't want his wife going to Beis Din anyways. Okay. My time, the Yehuda, how come Rabbi Yehuda says that a vow that the public knows about, they can't get remarried? The Ksubis, the pasuk says, "V'lo hikum b'nei Yisrael kinishbu loem nesia edo." That a vow that the public knows about cannot be annulled, because it says by the Givonim that the Bnei Yisrael the Bnei Yisrael spared them because they had sworn to them the Nesiyah Ha'eda. How much is considered Rabim? Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar Shlosha. Rav Nachman says Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak 3, Yomim Shnayim Rabim Shlosha. That when the pasuk says Yomim Rabim, so Yomim is 2, Rabim is 3. Rav Yitzchak Amar Asar says Rav Yitzchak 10, Eda Ksibu, because it says Eda by the Givonim. It says V'likum b'nei Yisrael kinishbu lahem Nesiyah Eda, and Eda is 10. Rav Meir Omer said, Rav Meir, that any neder that you have to go to Beis Din, so if they get divorced in that, they cannot get remarried. Rabbi Elazar Omer says Rabbi Elazar, the only reason why when it needs to go to Beis Din is they can't get remarried is only because of a situation when it doesn't need to go to Beis Din. If it does not need to go to Beis Din, maybe he'll make the argument that if only he knew that he could annul it that day, he would have done so. But my come, forget what's the machlokes. Rav Meir Savar Adam Rotza Shitizbazo Ishta Beis Din. Rabbi Elazar Savar Ein Adam Rotza Shitizbazo Ishta Beis Din. So Rav Meir says, look, a fellow would want his wife to go to Beis Din to annul the vow, to undo the vow. So therefore, we have to be concerned that if she marries somebody else, he might then say, oh, if only I knew that she can go to Beis Din, I would have had her go to Beis Din. Whereas Rabbi Elazar says that a person doesn't want his wife to go to Beis Din, but the concern is that if in situations where it does not need to go to Beis Din, he can annul it himself, maybe he won't know that he could annul it, and then after she gets remarried to somebody else, he might say, oh, if only I knew that I could annul it, then I would have annulled it. Alright friends, that was Daf Ayin Daled, Masechet Ksubis. Hope you enjoyed. Peace out.